Better Buying Institute is a nonprofit research and education organization, and our vision is that buyers and suppliers work together with responsible purchasing practices so that they can achieve their shared goals for business profitability, but also for social and environmental sustainability. And achieving that vision starts with evidence. We collect data from suppliers around the world about their customers' purchasing practices. And by purchasing practices, I mean the day-to-day decisions and actions that brands and retailers use to bring products to market. And those encompass 7 key categories. They include planning and forecasting, design and development, cost and cost negotiation, sourcing and order placement, payment and terms, management of the purchasing process, and sustainable partnership. Being an independent third party and collecting this type of data allows us to protect the anonymity of suppliers so that they're comfortable sharing the real facts about what's going on in the business relationships. We further protect their anonymity by taking all the data we get, aggregating it together, and then we start to produce reports. We produce reports for industry so they understand trends with purchasing practices that need to be addressed and get some insights on how to begin to address that. But most importantly, we produce reports specific for companies about their own purchasing practices, how those compare with the industry as a whole, and ideas and solutions coming from their suppliers about how they can change. A lot of sustainability initiatives begin with brands and retailers, and then they go on to be controlled by brands and retailers. And Better Buying is unique is that we started with suppliers. We spent a lot of time with suppliers early on to understand what are the purchasing practices that really impact their business, but also then go on to impact their ability to provide good working conditions. We also wanted to know what kind of data are they already collecting internally that they would be willing to share with a third party if we protected their anonymity. And after 6 years of research, we've developed rigorous surveys and processes that are delivering reliable data with actionable insights that can be used to drive brand and retailer improvements. We don't measure anything that we don't need to, and so that rules out a lot of commercially sensitive data and also data that the supplier doesn't really have and can't see firsthand. We have hardware security, software security, and standard operating procedures that further protect our data. And we go on to never name a supplier. We never name a supplier's company that's participated in our rating cycle. And we never give the raw data to anyone, with the exception of open-ended comments that suppliers provide that are really meant to give buyers guidance on how to improve.
I think the platform is great in that it's very straightforward, very easy to use. It's very anonymous, but also gives you an avenue with which to give your detailed responses or ideas and concerns to the customer without risking any loss of business, because it is completely anonymous.
Because of our protection of data and protection of supplier anonymity, Better Buying has been determined to be the best way for suppliers to give data about purchasing practices. So compared to supplier surveys that are driven by the buyer or large supplier summits that buyers host where they're asked to be given information about purchasing practices, what they can do better, Better Buying is able to get the real facts, get information that suppliers are comfortable sharing, and as a result have more rigorous, stronger data, more reliable data that can be used for improvements. Suppliers' core competencies are in production, and they've seen it all. They work with good customers and they work with bad customers, and so they're well positioned to be able to share what kind of practices work best. And so the information coming from suppliers can be used by a buyer for solving problems, for creating more efficiencies in production, for dialing in the kind of design details that a brand or retailer really can afford and still hit their target price, and actually to be able to use to come up with processes that can achieve shared sustainability goals.
When we have this two-way dialogue that's created by Better Buying, it creates, I'd say, like a culture of innovation in our teams, because they know that they can provide good feedback to the customer in an anonymous way, so that can be negative feedback, constructive feedback, and they then take it very seriously, and we've seen them implementing some of these recommendations in the way they work. So that innovation piece is so important right now, because we have to keep changing and improving the ways we work, find out ways to save cost, to improve lead times, and offer a more competitive package overall to our customers. By them taking our feedback seriously, it helps with that.
I feel is incredibly important because knowing who your customer and who your supplier is, and understanding how you can improve communication, and you can improve also service, that requires an open dialogue. And then if you don't know how you're rating in a specific area, then you don't know that you have an issue, and then you don't address it. But when you do the ratings, you start questioning, why is it that we're getting this score? And then the dialogue starts and things happen. And I believe that it's the way to improve relationships, services, and become a better supplier.
Suppliers know that when they raise their concerns with us, that we're going to take those right out to industry and to the companies that need to improve. And this really requires then that we're able to show change. So when a supplier submits a rating of one of their customers to Better Buying, they instantly receive the scorecard from that rating. We have suppliers that are comparing those scorecards for companies that are their customers year over year to make sure that the performance is improving and trending in the right direction. We also have suppliers that compare scorecards of their various customers so that they can understand which are the better customers, and either start to shift more volume toward those good customers, or if they're not really in a position to do that, they can at least understand where that buyer is going to need more support to have a more productive and better business relationship with them. And then the supplier can shift support and resources to that customer to fill in that gap. First, just asking for the data is a strong signal for suppliers, because it indicates that the brand or retailer, their buyer, cares about their feedback, is interested in receiving that feedback, and is interested to begin that process of change. But then once you have the data, this is very useful for companies to get internal leadership buy-in to embed responsible purchasing practices across the company. And what we're seeing is several brands and retailers that subscribe with us not only embedding improved purchasing practices into their sustainability strategy, but Better Buying into their sustainability strategies, because they understand that not doing so undermines their achievement of their social and environmental sustainability goals. Brands and retailers also benefit from the benchmark data so that they can compare their performance against others in the industry. And so not only, when you see that you're not performing as well as the industry and perhaps competitors in a small segment of the industry, such as sporting goods, it really drives that competition to improve, to be better than the others. The benchmarking data is also really useful internally, because it can be used to compare how different product category teams are carrying out their purchasing practices, how different brands are performing, and even different operations around the world, how those are comparing with each other. And that internal competition then creates an opportunity for learning and growth, and really creates a learning space where the entire company can learn from each other. The benchmarking is really valuable, and that's also then why Better Buying is so valuable. If you're trying to collect data about your own company's purchasing practices, you don't have anything to compare with. And without that benchmark data, it's pretty difficult to convince others in your company that they need to improve. Brands and retailers are also able to use our data to demonstrate accountability to stakeholders that they are indeed working on purchasing practices and they're starting to improve. Increasingly, there are a number of stakeholders that are very interested in purchasing practices because of the impact that they have on workers, but also because of the business and financial risk it places a company under. And so our data is able to be used by a company to say, hey, we're not only working on purchasing practices, we're improving. Our work is actually paying off and having impact. We started in the apparel industry, and that's what we're most well known for. Our Better Buying Purchasing Practices Index is our flagship survey, and it's delivering lots of good data and impact. But now we're also responding to additional challenges suppliers are facing, and also challenges and barriers that brands and retailers are facing in integrating responsible purchasing practices into their companies. As part of a strategic goal to evolve our research methods and tools, we've launched our Better Buying Partnership Index, which is a short, subjective survey that allows us to give supplier perceptions about the key purchasing practices areas. And it's usable beyond Tier 1, and it's usable to understand the relationships between various buyers and suppliers along the supply chain. We're also working to achieve widespread use of our data by strategic partnerships with stakeholder groups and with key markets. We're also exercising opportunities to lead on work in the purchasing practices in the consumer goods segment. There's a lot of interest in purchasing practices right now, and with that interest comes an opportunity for wasteful work, for duplication, for focus on isolated practices that really won't move the needle for suppliers if they're changed. So we're really wanting to use our long experience and knowledge in this area to shape the way the industry moves forward on purchasing practices. Finally, we know that collecting data and writing research reports isn't enough, so we're supporting improvement in purchasing practices through diverse education, training, and innovative approaches that meet high-priority stakeholders' need for understanding and support their readiness to improve practices. We're raising up supplier voices about practices that need to change. Companies are changing, and things are really beginning to improve for suppliers. We also see that brands and retailers that understand and put improved purchasing practices at the heart of their sustainability strategy are building more resilient supply chains that can withstand future disruptions and shocks. So even in the context of coronavirus pandemic and other global challenges, our subscribers are continuing to use better buying data and continuing to improve their purchasing practices performance year over year.